Hey guys, what's up? It's Paul Salazar at Hilton Hyland Real Estate. Today I have a friend of mine and our guest speaker, Chris Hendricks, over at Fox Law out of North County, San Diego. He's going to be talking to us about insurance lawsuits that are happening right now because of the Eaton Fire and the Palisades Fire. Chris, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Paul. It's great to see you. Great to be on here.
Yeah, yeah, man. You too. You too. Very excited to have you on. So let's talk about what you're doing right now to support the homeowners that have lost their properties in the Eaton Fire.
Yeah, so I think first off, there's the initial stages of what resources are available, guiding people through. There is an application you can make to FEMA for some initial aid, and then helping them out with their initial part of the insurance claims. And then the last part there would be future litigation against the entities responsible for causing the wildfires.
Yeah, and based on what we've been seeing, we saw that the Eaton Fire was most likely caused by Edison. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think we do have really good evidence at this point that Edison, at least at the very minimum, contribute, but we do think they were the source of this fire, of the Eaton fire.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. So, how does pursuing a lawsuit against a utility company benefit like the homeowners? Like, how long does that process take? I mean, obviously, you've been doing this for a long time, doing similar types of cases in the past, right? So, what's that process look like for these homeowners?
Yeah, and over here at Fox Law, we've been doing wildfire cases for about a decade, around 9 years now. We've been doing wildfire cases, not just in California, but also the recent cases of Maui. We have cases in Colorado for the Marshall Fire, Texas, New Mexico, Washington State. But we are here in San Diego. Everyone at the firm is from California, and that's where most of the work is done on wildfire stuff. So there's a couple questions in there. And how does it benefit homeowners? I think the biggest thing you're seeing here is that a lot of people are finding out, sadly, that they're underinsured for coverages for their home. That means two major things. One, they don't have enough in their insurance to replace the contents of their home. And a bigger one often is they don't have enough to rebuild their home. Even if they get the entire insurance policy that they paid for, in today's dollars, it costs a lot. I mean, you're in real estate, the amounts we're seeing to build for new construction is pretty high, and most people aren't
Yeah.
insured for that. In terms of timing, we see these vary a lot. I'd say the 1 to 5 year mark is like the outer for the quickest time, about a year. We've seen a fire case settle and resolve, and we've seen the longest about 5 years. But I would say in that 2 to 3 year range, you could feel pretty comfortable that there should be some headway on getting these cases towards resolution in that time frame.
So, how does it work? Are you working with like hundreds and thousands of families together, or are there multiple lawsuits being put against the utility company?
So that's a great question, and I think there's a lot of confusion on it, and the answer is both. We are working with hundreds of plaintiffs in this case, specifically the Eaton Fire against Southern California Electric, but everyone does have their own case. This is not a class action where the damages are the same amongst everyone. Everyone who is affected by it had a different house, has a different evacuation story. Some people have lost loved ones. The requirements to rebuild are different, and then the insurance that they've recovered is different. So everyone gets their own case. Everyone's own case gets its own damages analysis, and then afterwards, that's where the eventual settlements or trials will be individual cases. That said, liability is the same, and because of that, they end up in a coordinated proceeding, and that'll be in LA County. Will be the coordinated proceeding. So all these cases, all these thousands of cases, probably over 10,000 cases, will be coordinated in front of one judge in LA County.
Okay, so there'll be multiple people, multiple law firms, and then it'll just be one judge
Correct.
ruling it
Yeah.
out. Okay, gotcha.
And,
Okay.
and that's for a couple of reasons, but one, you really want to make sure there's some consistency in terms of what the judge is ruling.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. And in your experience, right, with the other wildfires in Lahaina and Colorado, what can they expect in terms of payout? I mean, obviously it's going to be very different, right? Like you said, they have different houses, different stuff inside their house. Some people lost loved ones. Can you give us some examples of what you've won for your clients?
Yeah, it varies so wildly. Like you were saying, every claim is very different. You can have a house that's worth $1 million or $500,000 in Altadena but there's also Lavinia, which is homes that are $5 to $7 million, and then in Pasadena you even have homes that are in excess of that. So essentially, what the two categories of damages are, you can either get diminution of value, what's the value of the property the day before the fire, what's the value after, and then the bigger category of damage that we like to pursue is what's the replacement value? What does it take to build the home that was destroyed by the fire in today's dollars? And that's the number that we're looking at. So obviously that depends on your home. You're not entitled to rebuild a home that's twice the size or anything like that, or at least seek that compensation. You can rebuild how you want, but that's the level of compensation that we're looking for, at least in terms of the total lost properties.
Okay, sounds good. So, what if their insurance is sufficient? Let's just say that, right? If their insurance is sufficient, but they're also part of the lawsuit, but their insurance is going to cover, the amount it'll cost to rebuild. Is there still an opportunity for them to get money from this lawsuit or no?
Yes, there is, and I would say that is a abnormality. There's just the way insurance policies work. They're almost never fully insured. Even if they have a structures or a dwelling part of the property that would rebuild the house, there's usually things that aren't covered or insured at very small amounts. So that would be things like separate structures, if there's a garage or an ADU unit. Those are usually very much underinsured on any policy. There's also landscaping, which has sometimes just a few $1,000s. And if you have mature trees, lawn, anything like that, anyone who's done that knows that those cost way more than that. So it's not something that we see very often. But even so, there are a couple categories that you can pursue against the private utility here, Southern California Electric. They would be totally uncovered. Things like cherished possessions. That would be something like a wedding dress or a wedding gown, or things that may have a lot of sentimental value to the owner, but don't really have a fair market value. Those really don't get valued on an insurance policy, no matter what. And then the other thing would be annoyance and discomfort damage. That's having to evacuate, any harrowing story that goes along with that, and just the inconvenience of being out of your home. In this case, what we expect to be 2 to 3 years is a pretty common amount of time for people to rebuild. We know some people from the Woolsey fire that we worked with, it took them 3 years to even get started because architects are hard to find, general contractors are hard to find. So that's really, while I guess in theory it's possible to be fully insured, it's not something we really see when people lose their home.
So you guys are there to help them out with the balance of what, their insurance gives them 1.5 million, let's just say, but it costs, an extra 500,000 to rebuild. Plus there's another 500,000 of items in the house that they lost because of the fire. So then you guys will get the extra $1 million.
Exactly. So what we do is our firm doesn't take any part of the actual insurance recovery. We're there to help with that to the extent the clients need it. But our goal is to get them whatever's necessary to make them whole from Southern California Edison in this case.
Okay, got it. So they can get money from the insurance plus this money. So they can potentially have extra money. Is that true?
Yeah, that's actually the entire idea, is that we only operate on the delta, what we can get for our clients in excess of their own insurance. We don't take a fee on anything that's within the insurance limits. We're just trying to go after Southern California Edison for the extra.
Gotcha. I know we had talked a few weeks ago when this started, and I was asking you, hey, are you going to see people actually suing the insurance companies here? And you said probably not. So I guess that was my question. Are people also doing insurance lawsuits on top of this, or just this?
So probably not. There will probably be some. Just it's not going to be a frequent thing that happens. Most people. And I'm talking in like that really high, like 80s, 90s percentile, are significantly underinsured. We don't anticipate these insurance companies putting up a big fight if there's, a dwelling coverage for a single family home is only a few $100,000. They're just not going to be able to rebuild. We don't envision the insurance companies fighting them on that. Usually they will just write them the check. Same with the contents. Most people are significantly underinsured. Now that said, out of all the thousands and thousands of people who have lost their home and possessions, there's probably going to be a few fights that pop up where there will be lawsuits, but it's not going to be extremely commonplace, would be my estimate on this one.
Got it. So we've been talking a lot about the Eaton Fire, right? Which it seems it's more obvious that it was caused by a public utility company. Any indication on Palisades Fire?
The Palisades fire, we think, looks a bit more tricky. We are looking into governmental liability. I think a lot of people have heard about the reservoir having ongoing maintenance and not being full at the time, and that is something that we are investigating now. But we don't have the same degree of confidence. SE wasn't in the area from what we can tell, and our investigation there is ongoing for the Palisades.
Okay. And what's your time frame for the Eaton Fire in terms of when you think this will get settled? Any indication on that?
I do not have a crystal ball on this one, Paul, but it's always hard to estimate. But like I said, I think that 2 to 3 year time frame is a pretty reasonable estimate. Every case is different, and like I said before, the outliers would be that 1 to 4 year range. But I think in that 2 to 3 year range, we're going to really start seeing things move.
Okay, got it. And based on your experience, you said that you've done, the Wolseley fire, the Lahaina fire. Were any of these caused by public utility companies, or were any of
All
your
of them.
lawsuits?
Yeah.
All of them were.
Yeah, so Woolsey and Thomas, if you remember those from a few years back, those were both against Southern California Edison. So I think what we're looking at is, while it's not the same exact theory of liability, it's very similar in terms of what we're investigating here.
Got it. Because what I see over here, and I'm not sure how the construction of housings and utility lines are out in North San Diego County. Over here, even in the super high-end areas of Brentwood and Palisades, you have power lines running throughout the front yard, the side yard, the backyard. And so you're seeing these power lines, you're seeing the transformers, and you're seeing trees going right through them. And it's just a matter of time until, heavy wind comes and it's, it hits a transformer and it starts a fire. Do you see utility companies starting to take action on this and saying, we need to put these underground?
Yeah, and you are seeing that more in some of these rebuild areas. Some cities have done it for years. I think Irvine's always an example where you see a lot of the power lines are grounded. They are in the ground in that area. In some new cities, you see that. Some cities, you usually see it in the ones that have more funds, are coming up with proposals to do that as well, just to protect for this very risk. I think the two things that you're going to see is more underground power lines as things go forward. Obviously, that costs a lot of money, but these wildfires cost a lot of money as well.
Yeah.
If you look between Palisades and Eaton, there's just billions and billions of dollars in damages. But I also think you're going to see more rolling power outages. Northern California gets a lot more than we do in Southern California, and I think that's going to be at least the lower hanging fruit for them to make sure that they don't light things on fire in high wind events.
Yeah, yeah. And are these public utility companies, are they owned by the government, or are these privately owned?
Yeah, so there's two words that they're utility companies, and there are some that are public, some that are private. So while Southern California Edison is a publicly traded company, it's technically a private company. You can go look at their ticker symbol. They are traded on the stock exchange, but they are technically not owned by the government. There's others that provide power, like LEDWP, that is a public entity. They are a governmental entity.
Okay, gotcha. And what we're seeing right now, at least here in LA, are a lot of fires that are started by arsonists. You guys get involved with any of that stuff, or is it just purely utility companies?
So our case is unfortunately with an arsonist, or you sometimes hear about a homeless encampment fire, fireworks, things like that. If you remember back, I think it was Riverside or San Bernardino, there was the one where where they were setting off fireworks for like a birth announcement, a gender reveal. That's the word. And they actually
yes, yes, yes.
destroyed some homes during it. Unfortunately, there's no one to go after where there's significant funds. Burning down a house costs millions of dollars. When you start burning down neighborhoods, it's many times that. So when you see it from an arsonist or a single person, an individual, there's not really a lot to go after there. So unfortunately, in those cases, there's not a lot we can do to help people recover.
All right. And on the insurance end, I'm not sure if you're like privy to like the information, but what are insurance companies doing? What is the state doing? What is the federal government doing to help insure these communities moving forward? Because I'm sure there's going to be a lot of companies saying I'm not going to insure these areas, but the California Fair Plan only covers up to $3 million, right? And a lot of these neighbors, especially in here in LA, in the hillside communities, these houses are, at the lowest price point, they're worth 3 million, but they're 5, 6, 20, 30, 40, 50, $60 million houses. Are you seeing any trends, or are you hearing things in the industry that these companies are starting to make changes?
I think you're going to see more of these areas designated as high-risk fire areas, Altadena, Pasadena being one. There's a moratorium for insurers to leave the state right now, but I would not be shocked when that moratorium's up that more of them leave the state and more people are stuck on fair plan. And when you say the number is 3 million, that's the maximum coverage. There's a lot of people on fair plan with under $1 million or 1.5 million in total coverage. And it sounds like a lot of money until you try to go rebuild your house and you're getting quotes at $800, $900, $1,000 a square foot for rebuild cost. You see that money doesn't go very far. So that's essentially what I think we're going to see is I think there's going to be a push for some more insurers to leave the state, or there's going to be a fight with the state of California to adjust their rates to account for these ongoing wildfires that seem to happen every couple of years here.
Yeah, and was it true that the California Fair Plan Fund is not sufficient enough for what happened?
I think that's something that we're going to find out more on exactly, but I do think just on the estimates of damages, I do think they're going to be light. Now, that's not saying that they're not going to be able to come up with the money elsewhere. There's still a general fund for the state. There's still potential other areas for relief. So I haven't heard anything where they're not going to be paying out on claims.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. And I think for me, the last question is if somebody's watching this video and they haven't been informed that there's a possible lawsuit against California Edison for the Eaton Fire, they reach out to you. What does that process look like from start to finish?
Yeah, so as soon as someone retains our services, we'll start doing surveys of their property. We'll ask for some photos and some information. We can pull some property records of what it looked like beforehand. And then we'll start getting our experts out there to survey the property, see what it costs to rebuild the house that they lost, and then also see what else needs to be done based on the fire. If you remember from the Thomas fire, there's the Montecito mudslides afterwards. So sometimes erosion control is a big deal after a fire. Anyone who lives in Altadena or Pasadena knows there's a giant hillside, basically mountains right next to a lot of these homes. So sometimes there needs to be additional efforts and structural engineering required. So we got to get all the right experts out there, make sure we can rebuild the home safely, and then from there we'll present claims to Southern California Edison to get recoveries.
Okay, so it doesn't seem like a very long process for them. They call you, they submit paperwork to you, probably a couple days, and then you guys will do the rest of the work.
Yeah, most of the work is handled by us. The one thing where we need some more client involvement is telling their story of what it's been like to be displaced, what their evacuation story was like, and then of course itemizing the contents. No matter what we do, we can't recreate what was in the home, so we always need some help with that. But the effort level is mainly on the attorneys and our experts to get the claims going.
Okay. I think that's it for now, but I guess maybe from your experience in dealing with these other fires, what is the percentage of people that don't end up rebuilding because they just don't have the money to rebuild? Because I'm hearing here in the Palisades, about 50% of people are probably not going to rebuild. So this entire community, I think it's like 5,000 homes. A lot of those aren't going to be rebuilt. So we'll see a lot of vacant lots. What's your experience like in these other fires? Like how many people are rebuilding and how many are not?
That really depends on the fire. Whereas like Ventura was most people rebuilt. You saw a little bit different thing go up in Paradise, where the fire was a lot bigger. There's a lot of retirement situations up there. So I think you really have to go specifically to that fire and see what the numbers are. I do think Palisades, there's just, like you were saying, with some of those numbers on houses, there's going to be a lot of people that can't get good insurance for houses that are in the 8 figures. So it would not shock me if they would not rebuild there after this fire.
Yeah. Awesome. Chris, I think that's all I have for now. Is there any other, comments, questions, or, thoughts about what you do, or, maybe more information on how to educate the people that have been affected by these fires?
Yeah, I just think first thing, everyone's still getting back on their feet at this point. The biggest advice I would give early on, we're already a little bit out from the fire. Check to see if you have ALE or loss of use coverage. If you do, look at getting a long-term lease sooner rather than later. Everyone's already heard that there's a run on any qualified rentals. If you have kids in school, if you work in a certain area, you got to make sure that you have a situation that works for you. And I think if you wait probably a month or 2 months, it's going to be very slim pickings. It's already slim pickings, but we're talking it's going to get worse. So I'd say do that. Do yourself a favor. Try to find something that works for you in the semi-long term for like a year or 2 years till you can kind of figure out what the next moves are. I would actually submit claims to your insurance company as soon as you can. A lot of times they will forward you on an undisputed portion of the claim earlier rather than later. You don't need to do it all at once. A lot of times they'll just cut you a check, and that can help people get back on their feet. So that's the first thing at this point. And then if there's any other questions, anyone's welcome to reach out directly to me. My email is Chris, CHRIS, at foxlawapc.com.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, I mean, from an agent's perspective, it is chaos out here, looking for rentals, especially in the neighborhoods that surround Palisades, Brentwood, Santa Monica, Venice, Mar Vista. It is nuts. I have
How many
clients that have
requests
just
for
given
rentals
up.
have you had?
Like, as a team, we've probably had like 20 or 30,
Yeah.
Palisades is not really my primary area of working in, more Brentwood, Santa Monica, Mar Vista, Venice, but it's very, very close by. So, we do have clients that live there, but it's a lot. It's a lot. And, these families are just, they're waiting in line to go look at houses. It's 20, 30, 40 applications. It's, and then also the price gouging law, although it's a good law to have in place, but it also makes it really sticky. A lot of agents don't want to even do leases. They're like, nope, not going to touch it. Don't want to get fined. I don't want to go to jail. And a lot of homeowners that say, hey, I'm open to leaving here as long as I'm compensated for me leaving. Like, I don't want to rent it at market value because it's not worth it for me to leave. They're not even leaving because they're just like, I'm not even going to get the amount that I would need to want to get out of here. So a lot of those where families are willing to pay for those houses, they can't even get that inventory because those owners can't. It's not legal for them. So again, although that law is good in theory, trying to practice it is really hard. It's really, really hard.
100%. Yeah. I've also heard that a lot of people renting property now, or there's scams involved, sight unseen rentals, asking for deposits. So just always be careful out there when there's opportunity. Sometimes you see less than savory characters come out. So just watch out for yourself. If something sounds not up to par, give it a second look.
Yeah. And I guess the other question is speaking about construction costs, because you guys have people to go out there and do the surveys and understand construction costs. If I'm talking to a developer before the fires, right, and I say, hey, what does it cost to build a house? Not on a hillside, but just on flat land. They're saying between 400 to 600 a square foot, depending on the level of materials they use and if they're a higher end developer, right? If they're in the hillside, maybe $500 to $700 a square foot. But now with the fires, there's not going to be enough people to build these houses. What are you seeing out there in terms of quoting these? Can you give us a figure for Eaton Fires?
Everything changes like dramatically with the area, and now there's going to be a run on contractors, a run on architects, and a run on materials. So I would not shock me to see the higher end homes going for more than those numbers that you're talking about. We also saw during the pandemic the cost per square foot just skyrocketed for new construction and for remodels. So we haven't had these estimates done yet for Pasadena, and we're working on them now as we speak. But I would not be shocked to see them come in, well over $500 a square foot, and I mean well over.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Well, it's I feel like things are changing all the time with this, so it's a very fluid situation for everyone involved. If you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to Chris. Chris, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. I know you're really busy right now, so it means a lot that you came on and help us educate people about what's going on. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, Paul. Great talking with you.
All right, man. Thank you. Bye.